Hey everyone, Jared James here, and welcome to this episode of Today with Jared James, a very special episode of the podcast here, as I'm going to focus in specifically today on Zillow, which I know a lot of you don't hear me do a lot, but it is something that a lot of you out there, especially in the real estate industry, have a lot of feelings about, get very angry about, and I've always tried to separate, a lot of your feelings and anger and those things from just being impartial and just not, just what's the truth, what's whatever. Like everybody's got a right to make a living and everything. But there has been some stuff that's come up lately about the Zillow Flex program specifically, and about the how it's changing and what's going on behind the scenes. And look, Zillow's had a bad couple of weeks here. Like let's be honest here. Like they've had some terrible weeks here. From a sexual harassment lawsuit, and this I'm putting aside a lot of other lawsuits going on. And by the way, at a certain size of a company, lawsuits are kind of a normal thing, but they have a sexual harassment lawsuit from somebody who's a former employee who says that their complaints were completely ignored. You had Compass come out and say that they are buying anywhere, which effectively, if it goes through, would make them the largest real estate company in the world by double. And now this company that you've got lawsuits back and forth with, that's like your main nemesis. And it wasn't that big of a deal until now it is, because if they become the largest real estate company in the world by double, and you're banning their listings from your site, which is what Zillow has said, if they use any of that pre-marketing, strategies that they're using, now that becomes a problem. And what happens if one of these places, Compass or someone else, decides to go their own portal or not give them the listings, right? If you have, like half the listings in the country and you say, well, we're not giving them to you, well, that kind of limits their effectiveness, right? And then they had a lawsuit last week by one of the same companies that filed an antitrust lawsuit against the real estate industry, and won, that essentially said that their Flex program was artificially inflating real estate commissions to buyers. And that when they're paying out 40%, because they are not being transparent about that 40%, that those Flex agents are having to pay back to Zillow, the lawsuit is basically saying, well, then what's happening is that those agents are inflating those commissions in order to make up for the referral that's being given back to Zillow, and that it's not being disclosed. And I'm going to tell you that knowing these agents, that's not true. They don't charge a different percentage based on, whether it's a Zillow Flex lead or whether it's another. What it does is it leads those people actually not making a lot of money. And that's very easy to figure out, by the way. All you have to do is take the commissions off of a non-Zillow Flex lead compared to the commissions on a Zillow Flex lead. We can figure that out very easily, right? I can see how the mentality goes there, or how the thought process goes there, but that's not what's happening. But the stuff I'm going to talk about today is probably a little controversial, and it's going to have a lot to do with what's in my DMs, my direct messages. And there is thoughts out there right now that Zillow, this huge publicly traded company, could potentially be involved in what a lot of agents are saying is steering or violating RESPA, which is a big deal, obviously. And I don't know whether they are or not. I can only respond to and give voice to the people who have sent me DMs. But when all this stuff came up about this lawsuit with Zillow potentially, with them not disclosing the referral, and then with commissions being artificially inflated and everything else. And, and I brought some stuff up about Zillow because there was all these thoughts that they're requiring a certain percentage of Zillow leads to be sent back to ZHL, which is Zillow Home Loans, and they need a certain percentage approved. And is this true? And they're taking leads away and not whatever. My DMs, guys, have been flooded. And they are flooded by team leaders and agents who are Zillow Flex teams who basically say, yeah, 100% true and worse than you think it is. And every single one of them says, don't mention my name. Anonymous, do not mention my name, but it's 100% happening. And I'm going to go through some of what I've been sent. The first thing I want to do is, one of you actually sent me the new manual for the new Flex program updates that go into effect October 1st. They go into effect October 1st, although a lot of times they're already being implemented as far as the percentages and everything. But I have the actual updates from Zillow that somebody sent me that I'm looking at right now. And essentially what we see, I'm not going to cover everything in here, but it says that there are new team standards. They're announcing it August 28th, September 2nd, and it actually goes into effect on October 1st. And there are key metrics. And some of these flex teams are irate about this, not just because of the metrics, but because of how they're being enforced and how it's happening. And one of them is that Zillow Home Loans pre-approval target. This is really interesting. It says the number of connections agents should help get pre-approved with Zillow Home Loans, roughly 10% of Zillow eligible connections that reached or passed or met with status in 90 days, okay? And it's so interesting because you're like, well, that's a target. Like that starts to smell of RESPA. Like you have to have a certain percentage, otherwise you will not get these leads. And that's a problem. We're going to get into that a little bit here.
Brokers and team leaders, first off, thank you for watching the podcast. I want to really quickly let you know about a new company that you're going to hear me talk about a lot, which is StackWrap. If you are a broker or you are a team leader, this is an absolute must for your business. If you have agents on your team in your brokerage, you know what it's like to pay for a bunch of technologies, to pay for a bunch of things that you know will help them, but they just don't adopt. And let's face it, one of the things in today's world is that there are so many cool tools and technologies and things that are there to help us, but we also have a million different bookmarks and a million different sign-ins, and we don't know if anybody's using anything, but the real win is in the adoption. StackWrap, similar to how you've heard me say to agents lately, how we've got to get our consumers into our ecosystem, StackWrap does just that for your agents. It takes one place where all of those things they have in their bookmarks, all of the forms, all of the Jared James Academy, all of their CRM stuff, everything, puts it in one spot, single sign-on, and gives you the ability to see what they're going to. It has a heat map, lets you see what they're using, what they're not, gives you the ability to send them notifications, gives you the ability to have announcements, and all of these things all in one place like a cohesive team, which is what you ultimately want. So if you're a team leader or a broker, make sure head on over to stackwrap.com, STACKWRAP.com. And like I said, I can't recommend it enough, guys. This is one that you absolutely need. It's affordable, and more importantly, it's going to get the results for you and your team or your brokerage that you want. So stackwrap.com. Let's get back to the episode.
But they have a little asterisk, and at the bottom it says, we're working with our agent partners to help consumers navigate affordability during their home search with Zillow Home Loans shopping tools like pre-approvals to help buyers understand which homes are within their budget. So what they're doing is they know that if you get to a point of pre-approval, your chance of working with that person, astronomically goes up. But they're saying, hey, we're not making them work with us. We're helping them by getting a pre-approval so that we can find out their affordability measures, because we want to help the consumer. And that's kind of how they're getting around it, right? With the whole 10% thing is we're just trying to help our consumer whether they work with us or not. They don't have to work with us. We just want to get them pre-approved so they know what they can afford. And on its merit, I get it. That's somewhat of a strong argument, but then you hear from a lot of these team leaders and flex agents that behind the scenes they're telling them, no, if they don't close with us, if a certain percent do not close with us, then you're getting downgraded. Like there's a whole system, green, yellow, red. Like you will be downgraded, green, yellow, red, okay? Another one is the percent to log transaction target. You will receive a monthly transaction target, which serves as your team's monthly sales goal. This metric measures the transactions your team logs compared to your team target over the last 6 months. This one's interesting. Operational health rating metrics. Follow-Up Boss requirement. Another company they own, they purchased, Follow-Up Boss. So you have got to send them to Zillow Home Loans, ZHL, where they make money from. You have to buy their actual lead, which means you pay a 40% referral. Used to be 35%. We'll talk about that. And now you have to use their CRM with these leads, their Follow-Up Boss, and you have to pay for it. It's a requirement, and you have to pay additional for it. And you have to log every call and have it recorded. And you have to follow their exact scripting of exactly what they tell you to do and they follow it. If you're not, they take it away. And it says each participating agent must have and use a Follow-Up Boss account that includes FUB calling capabilities to track FUB as FUB, Follow-Up Boss, calling capabilities to track and report on the status of their Flex connections. All Flex connections in FUB must be updated, correct, and current. The pay on time rate, the invoice amounts paid from transactions closed over the last 3 months divided by the total amount invoiced from the same period. Closing DOS submission rate, there's all these kinds of things that are in here, okay? They now talk about things like how they're going to keep track of this and what it looks like. And they talk about a predicted conversion rate, a PCR. The predicted conversion rate is an estimate of your future performance. And that's a big thing. A lot of these Zillow Flex agents and teams were sending me the documents that are actually being used, the charts and graphs that are being used, and how it's determining who to send leads to. And if you're not sending it to them and you're sending it to your lender or just allowing the client to decide which lender you want to send it to, then you get downgraded. And to me, that's a problem. And it says Zillow Home Loans pre-approval target. This represents the number of customers an agent should help get pre-approved with Zillow Home Loans. With this new target, our goal is to help consumers navigate affordability during their home search with Zillow Home Loans shopping tools to help buyers understand which homes are within their budget. It's to help them. And that target is 10% of Zillow-eligible connections that reached or passed met with status in the last 90 days, okay? Their pickup rate is an agent's responsiveness to incoming flex connection calls, which I get. They want 25% or higher. We want you picking up the phone, obviously. And then there's a lot of other things that are in here that I'm not going to talk about right now. There's coaching and follow-up boss smart lists and agent one-to-ones and all this kind of stuff that I'm not really going to get deep dive into right now, because those to me are not the crux of the issue. And I brought this up because of everything that was going on with Zillow. And look, I'm used to people in our industry being angry towards Zillow, but the messages people were sending me were pretty consistent. All pretty much similar, and I mean evidence. Like they were sending me copies, recordings of phone calls with reps and what they were saying that completely break, what they're allowed to be doing, and messages. And they're like, you can't share my name, you can't share. And yet it's clear that at least some of these reps don't really care what the rules are supposed to be. And by the way, most of these reps too have been reassigned, and it's like a lot of these Zillow Flex teams now within 24 hours got assigned new people because of these new rules, and they're not just talking to them, they're flying to their offices. Many of the big teams that I talked to said that like the big ups, the bigger ups at Zillow flew out personally to tell them what was going to happen. And a lot of it, I got to be honest, was because they were having conversations they couldn't put on the record. They couldn't email, they couldn't put over the phone. Like they're meeting with them so they can tell them the real deal. And we'll get into that a little bit as we go on here. But the main thing is, obviously, there's a thing called steering that I think we need to be careful of. And I want to be clear. I can't say whether they're doing this, not doing this. That's not my right to do it. I'm just reporting on my podcast what people are messaging me. Steering is a big one. You're not allowed to steer people to certain places. They're supposed to have choice. They're supposed to decide where they want to go based on who's the best rep. And one of the biggest complaints that I got from people was that most of the Zillow Home Loans reps were newer and not great and didn't have the same offerings as a lot of the other mortgage brokers. And so here you are going, well, I don't want to give it to them because they, number one, don't do a great job. They're new. They're not great at it. And they don't have the same offerings that my person's going to need in order to be able to close. And yet if they don't send them there anyway, they're getting penalized. And so it's a very interesting thing. But RESPA is really what I'm a little concerned about here, because RESPA explicitly states it prohibits any agreement or understanding to exchange it's called a thing of value for the referral of settlement service business. Hey guys, I want to talk to you about an amazing real estate tool right now called Mosaik. If you want to take your people off of the portals where they're all hanging out and whatever and into your ecosystem, this is the tool that does that. This is a beginning to end, not a CR, it's not another CRM, it doesn't replace that, but it's a beginning to end system that really looks at the lifetime value of your client and looks at every part of that process and takes care of all of it in a way that's completely transparent. So yes, they've got search, they've got transaction coordination, they've got, even for us when we do things like we teach our students the Core 100, they've got the ability to put those people in there, track what's happening, do all of that in an amazing way. But probably the thing that I love about this more than anything is the transparency. In an industry that keeps talking about transparency, and usually when you hear something over and over again, it means that it's not being done at all. This is actually a transparent tool. This is the first tool that I've seen that actually brings the consumer into the transaction. And I think that is the next level of where we are going within this industry. You hear from so many buyers and sellers that, oh, my agent didn't do anything, or I feel like they're not, and there's not this communication going on. This is the first tool I've seen, almost like the early days of .loop where you had that collaboration, but it was just for the document and the signature. They can do that with the transaction now, not only with the clients, but with the vendors, whoever it is, in an amazing way where they can see every step of what's going on. You can write notes to them back and forth. They can see every part of the paperwork and everything and the way that you decide to show it. It's really the next level of what we need to be doing from a consumer experience perspective, so they know what's happening, and more importantly, we drive that lifetime value back to you. So if you haven't yet, guys, this is a tool you're going to hear over and over again. and you're going to hear me talk about it because, I really think it's my role to not just, define what the problems or solutions are, but provide the tools that will actually get you there. And while so many tools right now are just check the box and just say you have them, this is one yourself, your team, your brokerage. If you're not on it yet, you need to be. This is not the last you're going to hear about this. They're going to grow astronomically, and this is something you need to get on board with if you're going to operate, if you're going to be one of those people that really overcomes and is that top producer in your area. You've got to have the right tools in place, and Mosaik is one of those right now. So do yourself a favor, go check out mosaik.io, mosaik.io. Again, mosaik.io. You won't regret it, guys. Send us questions if you do, but this is one of those ones that you're going to look back on and remember, amazing tool. So RESPA prohibits any agreement or understanding to exchange a thing of value for the referral of settlement service business. And so I think where we start to get into a little bit of gray area here that I think becomes a little bit of a problem issue for Zillow with all this stuff going on and with the way they're talking to their flex agents and the things they're asking them to do, is when you start talking about having a minimum of 10% come back to you to get pre-approvals through Zillow Home Loans, and if you don't, you get penalized. And even if you do, you get penalized if somebody's got higher than you. Getting or not getting those leads is a thing of value, huge. I have people in my DMs right now who are desperate, who 25, 50 or more % of their business is coming from these Zillow Flex deals that are now changing completely. And the idea that they don't think it's best for their client to go talk to this loan officer through Zillow Home Loans, and if they don't, they get downgraded, they lose leads, they lose their business. I don't know how that's not a thing of value. And the other issue was when they said, a lot of these people who are in my my DMs, and they're going, they want 10% of the people, who have opted in to talk to them. And they said the problem is that a buyer, when they fill out the form to talk to the agent, doesn't even realize at the bottom of the form, it is auto-defaulted, auto-checked as being, yes, I want to talk to a Zillow home loan agent. And the buyer doesn't even know they've done that. And then when the agent is talking to the buyer, they have the buyer has not even ready yet to talk to a loan officer, has no interest in it, has no whatever, and then the agent's getting penalized because the Zillow rep is calling going, hey, why aren't you having them talk to us? They're ready to talk to us. They checked that they want to talk to us. And the agent's going, no, they didn't. You auto-defaulted that to check, and they didn't even see it. They're not ready to talk to a loan officer. Like, you tricked them into that. And so this becomes something that is... This gets a little tricky. This is a very thin line as far as how this works, especially when agents are paid on closings, not on meeting people or getting leads, and you're asking them to refer you to Zillow Home Loans, ZHL, which primarily has newer people and people who aren't great and don't have the same offerings and don't have the same. And so this is the thing, though. But from a RESPA perspective, if you are penalizing people and not giving them leads because they don't, and you're using this whole green, yellow, red system, I've seen the charts. Like, they've literally been shown to me. Like, I've got copies of them, that this is absolutely happening. And if you get to a place of yellow or red where they kind of put you on pause and they're like, well, you're not giving us enough people right now, which again would be called a thing of value with RESPA, you're pulling your leads back. Your only recourse if you don't have any leads coming from them anymore because they're like, nope, you're not giving us enough business to our Zillow Home Loans, is to get your existing database to close with them, to try and make them happy and bring them back to you to up your conversions, because your actual database counts towards the numbers, which I don't understand at all. And yet at the same time, I saw examples of when you look at that 10% number and you looked at leads, things like land and those types of things, which are type of loans that Zillow Home Loans doesn't even offer, they're counting them towards that percentage, even though you can't send them to a Zillow Home Loans person because they don't have a product for them. So now if you're in an area where you have land that's selling or more than another, your percentage goes down when you have no chance to actually pass them over because they don't offer that product. Think about that for a second. That's the kind of stuff. And I actually heard it with my own ears. Zillow rep being like, we understand that. Yeah, that's something we're aware of, and that's definitely a downside right now, but it's absolutely happening, okay? And so this is something that I think is going to become an issue, especially with it being something new that's being put in place, and the anger that is coming from these agents right now and these team leaders. towards these people. And then when you add into all of that, you have to use a follow-up boss account. So not only do you have to use a follow-up boss account, but you have to pay for it. They're not saying we'll provide it and you have to use it, which you know is inconvenient. You can't use what you use. You have to use ours. They're saying if you want to get our leads, thing of value, then you have got to use our follow-up boss account as well, and you have to pay for it. And you have to follow our scripts. And every single call has to be recorded. And there's like all of these things that if you don't, then it's not going to be sent to you. And I'm not as upset about that. That's their prerogative. But I am the whole percentage of people to send. If you don't meet that, then you stop getting leads. That is a thing of value. I don't know how RESPA doesn't look at that and say, that doesn't really add up. That's not something that we're going to allow, okay? The other stuff is just anger. Like you're going to turn the industry against you. You're going to turn these agents against you. And you're almost holding them, not almost, you're holding them hostage because it's where most of their business is coming from. And yet even when you're giving it to them, it's like you're taking so much off the top that how do they continue to afford this? Like the message I got over and over again from people that were just irate, they were so angry was, hey, it used to be 35% and that was too much. Like in the industry, we do 25%. And if you're really going for it, you go for 30%. That's kind of industry standard or whatever, but they were at 35. But then they went to 40. And then they went to, you also have to pay for follow-up boss. And now you have to send over a percentage of your leads or you get downgraded and you don't get them anymore. And so it's crazy because these agents and team leaders are in my inbox going, this whole lawsuit, inflating commission rates. They're like, we don't change our rates at all based on flex or not flex. It doesn't change at all. We just don't make any money. Like after we give away the 40%, after we go and also have to pay for follow-up boss, after we're on our split with our brokerage, after all of this, and then you go, okay, well then where do they go from there? Another person sent me emails and sent me copies of recordings as well of actual phone calls where the Zillow reps are chastising the Zillow, the team leader and saying, well, they're not making any money because you're paying your agents too much. So now they're telling the team leader how they should run their team. And saying, no, it's not that we're taking 40% and we're making you pay for the follow-up boss and like whatever. It's that you're giving them too much, not that we're taking too much. And that is, I mean, my God, that's a freaking joke, like if I've ever heard one.
This episode is brought to you by Jared James Academy. Guys, I want to say thank you for all of you that watch and listen to our podcast. You may not be aware of this, but we literally coach and train tens of thousands of people, and you can be in our academy for as little as $99 a month. There's other options beyond that, obviously one-on-one coaching and all of those things, but for as little as $99 a month, you can be in our academy, which means that you have access to our app, Jared James Academy, or you can access it on your desktop. You have access to all of our courses that are on there that literally would sell for $1,000 a piece anyway, but they're all on there for you. And I personally go live with everybody on our academy 2 to 3 times a month, teaching stuff that I don't teach on Instagram or I don't teach on any of these other places. To give you an example, we just did a whole thing on AI. We did a whole thing on getting listings. We're about to do a whole thing about getting your emails opened. What does it look like? Internet service providers, all of this stuff. Part of operating in this market and being one of those few that's going to do really well and be the best in your market is staying ahead of your consumer. It's staying accountable. It's staying coached and trained. And we do that. We do it at extremely affordable cost. So if you love the things that I talk about on a regular basis and you want to take it to the next level, just go to jaredjamestoday.com/academy. And again, for as little as $99 a month, you can be in there with us, learning from me on a deeper level, learning from our courses, hearing from our coaches, all of these things. Or you can go even further and become one of our students with a one-on-one coach, and then you still have access to our academy. So go check it out. I hope you will. It's something that I think you'll find out has been missing from your business.
And most of these Zillow reps are going to be some kid that was hired, who's told what to say and told, whatever. And so that's just insane. Like when I heard that, I'm going, that can't be accurate. And yet it is, okay? And so, yeah, you got these people who are getting less if they don't give up what they're supposed to give up. You got team leaders now that are getting livid, and this is like the perfect storm of everything that's happening right now. And at the same time, the other thing that they're angry about is that you've got team leaders and Zillow Flex agents that are now fighting with Zillow as well because Zillow is apparently trying to claim people who are in the agent's SOI, their sphere of influence, as one of their leads that they want 40% on if they've ever set up a Zillow account. So, which is just about everybody. And so when they see them closing on someone and they have a Zillow account, they're like, well, that's ours. That should be 40%. That's our lead. And they're going, that's not your lead. That's my person. They just go on Zillow like everybody does. And so on top of all of this, there's this greed that's happening right now that it's like, it's not even like the reputation in the industry was already good, but like, are you trying to kill your reputation right now? And now you take all of that, and this is where this gets really dirty, because they're telling me now how these people are coming into their offices, and this is what's crazy. I had more than one tell me that, hey, I know that we have to put in writing it's 10%, but I'm telling you in this area, this is a competitive area, it needs to be 50%, or the leads are going to someone else. And the people who sent me this are going, you can't do that. Like, that's not, whatever. And they're like, hey, we're not going to put it in writing because we're not allowed to put that in writing, but we're telling you if it's not 50%, we're going to start moving your leads to other people. Now, that is clearly not allowed, okay? And again, that's what I'm hearing from people, but that's what I heard from more than one person, okay? I'm not saying that's happening. I'm saying that's what I was told. And then when you go the next level, I was told that you also now have Zillow reps that they're getting angry when they're not getting the percentage they want. So they must be on some kind of a system where if they don't get the percent from the Zillow flex teams they work with, then they get penalized or they get fired or whatever. And now you have these Zillow reps that are bypassing the team lead and going straight to the agents and chastising them and training them on how to not recommend other lenders. I heard that from more than one, okay, many actually. They're training the agents, they're bypassing the team leader and telling them this is how you don't recommend. You should not be, and they're actually getting angry if they're recommending other lenders, which again is not choice, okay? The buyer is supposed to have choice. I had one, and I'll end with this right here. I had one guy tell me that he was fighting with the Zillow rep and he was telling them, you can't do that. That's not allowed. Like, we have to give people what they want. We have to let them use the lender that's going to close the loan and going to whatever. And the Zillow rep told them that you are such a pain in the butt, and I'm just telling you now that if you do not do the things that we need you to do, we are going to be sending your leads elsewhere. Like, stop, it's going to be 50% or we're going to send your leads elsewhere. And just said, you're a pain in the butt, I don't care, I can't put this in writing, but like, that's not how it's going to work. Now that is crazy, okay? Now again, whether that's happening or not, that's what I was told in my DMs, and that's what I'm sharing with you. And I was told it by more than one, okay? That's not so that's some crazy stuff there. And I got to tell you, with a company the size of Zillow, I would have a very difficult time thinking that's coming from the top, because those are clearly violations. Steering, RESPA, the whole thing. And I think they're smarter than that. But there must be some kind of incentive when it comes to these Zillow reps for them to be hitting their numbers. Otherwise, why else would they be going out and kind of going rogue? But they're all kind of saying the same thing. So I'm interested from you guys to know, those of you that are listening right now, if you are a Zillow Flex team, are you guys seeing this stuff? Are you not seeing this stuff? I'd love for you to comment below. Although if you're watching this on YouTube, a lot of you don't want your names out there. I've noticed that. But I'd love to know if this is actually happening or not happening, okay? So is this going to be a story in our industry? Look, Zillow's already had a bad week, already had a bad 2 weeks. If this stuff is true right now, it can have a lot worse than just bad 2 weeks, because this is the kind of stuff that's not allowed. Everything that's been happening in our industry lately has been all about choice, consumer choice, making that choice, understanding, transparency, and this flies in the face of all of that. And so what we have here, I'm not accusing, I'm not, anything. Like, I'm telling you what my DMs are saying right now. And if Zillow is caught up in some kind of a situation where their reps are going rogue and they're getting people to steer, or they're violating RESPA based on the definition of what RESPA is there for and what's allowed and what's not allowed, the last 2 weeks are going to be nothing compared to what's actually coming, because we rely on an industry where people have choice and they make those choices, and we don't force people into things, especially when buying and selling the largest asset they're ever going to own. So hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know. I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys. and we'll have another one out soon. I'll talk to you guys soon.